just going to hand it over. But welcome to one and all. It's the first Wellbeing Wednesday of the year. We had a summer break, and we're really lucky to have Rakesh with us, helping us to find balance in your life. And as a Libran who's as imbalanced as it get, I can't wait to have a bit more balance. So yeah, your time, Rakesh.
Wonderful, thank you. So yes, just to echo what Finn was saying. Yes, we've known each other for 20-something years, but actually longer than that. But the last time we probably saw each other was probably not so far from 20-odd years ago, maybe 17, 18 years ago. So yeah, so what in the reason why I do love reggae is because, as Finn says, it's this positive message. It's about, hey, the world is, imbalanced. There's all kinds of crazy things going on in the world, but if we come together, if we fight together, if we love together, if we do things together, if we help each other and really properly come together, we can overcome anything. So this kind of positive message is something that really resonates with me. So it's, it's first of all recognizing that things are not so balanced in the world, but through our love, through our compassion, through our togetherness, we can overcome anything. So this is what my work is all about. So I still do play music, I still do gigs once in a while, and I still love reggae, I still do radio shows and things, but I also have many other interests. I'm a Gemini, so many things interest me. In fact, things constantly interest me that, I'm always searching for new things to keep my mind occupied and keep myself growing and learning and expanding and having this kind of childlike fascination for the world. So my background is I used to be a computer consultant, earned my money as a computer consultant, got myself out of poverty, then realized, hey, there's more to life than just making fault tolerant computer systems for big engineering companies and various institutions, and so I want to give something back to society. So at this point I just by some real crazy serendipitous actions got into homeopathy, and I became a homeopath. So I'm a qualified homeopath, and started doing disaster relief work around the world. This was really fascinating because all of a sudden, more or less for the first time, I kind of left England. I saw other parts of the world. I saw poverty. I saw all kinds of things. I saw people, in really difficult situations. I went to war zones and cyclones and earthquakes and what have you. So this gave me a much broader understanding of human nature, and how resourceful some people are, how powerful this, how amazing human beings can be, but also how I'm not quite sure what the right word is, what the most politically correct word is, but how corrupt, let's say. And my instinct is to use a slightly stronger word there, but I'll use the word corrupt for now. How corrupt people can also be, and there's this constant balance. How to find the kind of middle path to try and take care of everyone on this planet. So that led me to, I've done many things in my life, but from health and well-being, I then started also to look at the health and well-being of the planet in terms of nature. So I started building eco-villages and helping people grow food, and so one of the main things I do now is around permaculture, which many people think is exclusively about growing food, but actually it's much broader than that. It's a whole philosophy for how to see the world through ethical eyes, So through the ethics of how to take care of the earth, how to take care of people, and how to find this balance of, taking from a system what the system can give you while continuously enriching the system. So it's this kind of ethical approach for how you design things to become really strong, rich and vibrant. And which includes growing food, but it also includes building houses. It includes, how you make your electricity, how you earn your livelihoods, how you deal with people. So but what I noticed is very often, while people get really great at designing ecosystems, food growing systems where, all of the different elements within your garden, where the kind of how the water, wind, pollination, insects, and all the different elements that are passing through or are integral to your garden, how they all enrich each other's lives. While people get very good at doing that, they were often not so good at doing the same for other human beings, how to genuinely take care of others. So again, this is where that piqued my interest, so I then started really looking deep into that and discovered all kinds of things, everything from collaborative decision making, such as sociocracy, which is a real strong passion of mine, how to bring a group together, how to get them to understand what their collective needs are, and then moving together, constantly making decisions together for how you keep moving on together, and dragon dreaming and all kinds of really amazing stuff. But now I'm kind of putting all of this back together again, and I've started going back to the kind of looking at how to bring permaculture, so this design methodology for how to design really good, strong systems that really enrich your lives in a very ethical way. So earth care is about how you take care of the earth and how you meet your human needs, but in a way that also enriches the earth. So enriches plants, gives habitat to all kinds of different animals and insects and bacteria, takes care of the soil, makes sure the soil life is rich, makes sure the air is pure and clean, makes sure that the water systems are, whatever water comes into your system, it should always leave your system cleaner than when it came in. So whatever you're passing on to your neighbour is, your neighbour is now grateful because you're giving them, as say, water or air or whatever that is rich and vibrant, that then takes care of them, and so on. So, and in the same way, that's earth care. We also, in permaculture, people care is pretty much the same, but how do you earn your livelihood in such a way that you enrich the lives of others and take care of others? And that's others that you know, others that you don't know, so in other parts of the world, so exploiting someone in another part of the world to meet your needs is not permaculture. What about future generations? To deprive future generations of their ability to thrive and survive on this planet, again, is not people care. So this is permaculture. And so now I'm bringing all this back together again from the perspective of how do we design our lives by first of all looking at our health and well-being and how we find this balance of our own personal well-being, but in such a way that we also enrich others and enrich our surroundings. So yes, I've been doing these courses, which I've actually literally just started a course last weekend, a 5-week course on doing exactly this. So where we look at naturopathy, we first of all analyze ourselves in terms of our physical well-being, mental well-being, spiritual well-being. We look at what's imbalanced. We then look at different naturopathic tools that we can use to bring about that balance, and then we put it all through a permaculture design to see how we can design that to just flow. Because what we see in life is it's really easy to say, oh yeah, I'm going to give this up, I'm going to stop doing that, I'm going to, New Year's resolutions and all that kind of thing, and a few weeks later, it's all gone. It was a nice idea, but the reality is you're not going to follow it through. So instead, if we design it in such a way that it just becomes part of our effortless flow, So it doesn't take too much of an effort, but we also think, well, how can we plan in some kind of little feedback loops to make it fun, so that so to almost make it into a game. So when I do something, it's like, oh yeah, I can kind of almost reward myself, and you can have fun with other people as they're rewarding you and you're rewarding them in whatever way that may be, but it keeps you focused, it keeps you on track, and it allows you to stick to whatever it is you want to do in a really creative way. So that's kind of the essence of what I'm doing these days, and at the very heart of that is a tantric tool. So part of my life is I also used to teach yoga and meditation and tantra, and to define what I mean by tantra is anything that helps you to expand and grow in a positive way. So anything that helps you to understand the world, understand life, to enrich the world around you, so to enrich your inner world, to enrich your outer world, that allows you to move in a good, positive direction to support others, to support yourself, and so on and so forth. That's Tantra, to expand your mind, to expand the world in a really positive direction. So so this is a tantric tool called Prama, but you can use it, it's pretty ubiquitous. You can use it and apply it to anywhere. You don't have to be spiritually minded, you don't have to be of a particular religion, you don't have to follow Tantra to be able to utilize this, because it's just common sense. It's just really nice, simple common sense. So I'm going to share my screen, and we'll just quickly go through some of the basics of Tantra, of this particular tool, and then maybe with whatever time we'll have left, we'll just go through a little exercise to see if we can dig a little bit deeper and actually explore some of the areas, especially I suspect probably from the perspective of our physical realm, because that's probably the easiest one to work on.
And Rakesh, sorry. Everyone else calls him Rakesh. I will learn to call him that. But I thought what might also be useful for people is thinking about, so one is telling them a bit about what you do, but if they want to find, so these sessions are really just tasters. Mm-hmm. So maybe at the end we could also just explore about any resources, because it sounds like you've put together quite a lot of different things, mm-hmm. but you spent years discovering and exploring, so it might be, so just at the end that would be great for everyone. But sure. And do feel to ask questions. He's very nice, and if anything doesn't make sense, he'll explain, but I'm with it, so carry on please.
So if you can give me like a 15-minute cut-off, and so that then we have at least 10 minutes at the end for whatever, because otherwise I'll talk for the next 5 hours. I can easily do that. Well, I can't because I've got another appointment, but theoretically I could very easily, because for me this is really fascinating, and I really love sharing this kind of stuff. So great. So I'm going to share my screen, and it should be this one. So Prama, Prama.
Also, just to say before we go on, Julie just said also, if it's right just to speak up slightly, that would be great, Rat.
Okay.
And Julie, you might be, if you can turn your volume up between the two of you, I think that would be the one.
Okay. So is this better for you, Julie? Yeah.
Can you hear me?
We can. Yes.
Oh yeah. Sorry. Yeah, I have got it on full volume. It might be just something wrong with mine, but carry on. I can hear you. I did say you a lovely, gentle voice.
Wonderful. Thank you. So all right, so let's break down my name first of all. So Rakesh is my actual name, Rootsman Rak is my DJ name, and so because Finn and I know each other from the reggae world, my DJ name is how many people knew me in those days. So those who know me from those days still call me Rootsman or Rak or Rootsman Rak, but my birth name is Rakesh, which in Sanskrit means the Lord of the full moon. So the full moon teaches, guides, leads people without having any energy of its own. It just through its presence it guides. So that's the meaning of my name. So what is Prama? So Prama is a tool for looking at how how we create equipoise in our life. You know, this ever-changing but very subtle balance between our physical, mental, and spiritual realms. So, yeah, it's looking at each of these specifically to see how we can find balance in each of these, which so it's always described in triangles. Tantra is very has a lot of symbolism in it, and the triangle, you know, as we probably know, is a sign of balance. So so we're looking at the spiritual, physical, and mental realm, but in each of those we're also looking at food, rest, and exercise. So basically, Prama is a tool that helps us to investigate and look at our lives from the perspective of physical. What do we mean by physical food, and what is food, first of all, and what does good physical food look like? You know, what is the purpose of rest? What's its function? And what is the purpose, and how do we know that and what are the different ways that we can put into action physical rest and exercise? You know, what is the purpose of exercise? So we can do that for physical, mental, and spiritual, and then, as I say, bring them all back together again to see, you know, which areas are we really strong on, which areas are we doing well at, and which areas are we maybe not doing so well, and therefore what areas would we like to put some energy into. So perhaps first of all what we can do is actually define these words, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen now so I can actually see everyone. So from an energetic perspective, what do we mean by food? You know, what is the purpose of food? What does it give us? What from an energetic perspective? So remember, food can be described from the perspective of physical, mental, or spiritual. So it's not just physical food that we eat, but so what is, from an energetic perspective, food? Would anyone like to offer a suggestion?
It gives us the nutrients and, like you say, the energy that we need, even if we're having an inactive day. It gives us that nutrient and energy for both sort of the body, for the body to be able to move, but for the mind to be able to function as well.
Brilliant. Exactly. So it's fuel. It's some kind of energy. So, as I say, regardless of whether it's physical food or whether it's spiritual food or mental food, but it's some kind of energetic that we take on that fuels us, that keeps us going, that allows us to replenish our stocks and keep going. So it's fuel. So, you know, like in a car, it would be petrol, but it's not just petrol. It's petrol and oil and oxygen in this really careful mix that actually allows us to move on. So it's these subtle energies that, in the right balance, will really make the system function. So
is there also something about like the energy of food? Like I remember my brother teaching me about bean sprouts years ago, but he was into mung beans, and he was like, he was going vegan at the time, and mung beans, he was telling me, because they're still alive, and he was talking about life force energy, but a lot of the food we eat is very old. You know, that Tesco's keep apples in special conditions these days for years, whereas actually we're meant to pick a tomato and eat a tomato. And Julie was talking about tomatoes in her garden, but there's something for me about energy in food. Different foods give me like, so if I eat fresh food where I put a mix of stuff and where possible, at the moment I'm managing to put some tomatoes in or put a courgette in, or like stuff that's properly fresh. I do, like, I don't know if it's psychosomatic, but I feel like there's more energy for me because it was.
we'll definitely cover that in a moment. So let's first of all get some definitions of these words, and then we'll go exactly into it and looking exactly what you're saying. Perfect. So you're a few steps ahead of us. Brilliant. So so food, regardless of whether it's physical, mental, or spiritual, is about fuel. So what then is exercise from an energetic perspective? How do we differentiate between food and exercise? What does exercise give us? From an energetic perspective.
Well, exercise gives us an opportunity to sort of use the fuel, burn some fuel.
Yeah, for sure.
Should the exercise not be balanced with the food intake?
Definitely. If you do too much exercise without enough fuel, poof, yeah, you'll crash, and vice versa. Taking on too much fuel without any exercise to burn it off, poof, you get obese. So, all right. So the essence of what exercise gives you is it allows you to expand, to grow. So, and I don't just mean grow your belly, but to see new things, understand new things, comprehend, to go beyond where you are. So it's about expansion, but in a really positive. It's about growth. So it's the practice. So so for example, a spiritual growth could be about contemplation and understanding of some kind of energetic, some kind of relationship between, I don't know, between different animals and insects and water and wind and all the different elements and how they all interact with each other, and it's some kind of spiritual realization about these different energies. Or it could be an internal realization. So so the last one then is rest. So what is as an energetic, what does rest do? What does it give us? What's its purpose? What's its function?
Recovery.
Fantastic. So recuperation. It gives us times to recover, to rebuild, to pause, to reflect, to understand, to incorporate. So so after maybe doing some kind of reading, to then put it down, or having some kind of a conversation, to kind of then just that restful period, just to contemplate it, to imbibe it into your system. What does that mean? How can I work with this? What does it do? So it gives us, from a physical perspective, the physical body, as we know, all the different organs work have a particular purpose, and each one has a particular way in which it absorbs its nutrients or its energy, and then a particular way in which it releases any excess, and so on and so forth, and how it passes on nutrients or energetics to the next organ. So, but there are certain times where it won't do that if it's really stressed. So if you're in this kind of fight or flight mode, the body just doesn't have time. It says, well, no, my priority, I'm being chased here by a leopard or by a tiger. I'm in this fight and flight mode, so I'm more interested in saving my backside than digesting properly. So forget that part, let's just concentrate on survival. So certain process, it's a survival strategy for our body. It's and this is why people say, when you're eating, always eat in silence, eat with peaceful, eat with love, eat with eat with a good mood, because then it's not just food that you're digesting, or rather, as well as digesting the food, you will actually properly digest the food, as opposed to just consuming it and then just passing it out just quickly without actually really taking the energy from it. But also, just the fact that you're in this mode, you're in this mood, you're not just feeding yourself with physical food, you're feeding yourself with love. As we all know, our mother's food, without any question, is the best food in the world.
And Rakesh, you said the best thing, because you might not realise that Mel is Julie's daughter, so Julie and all the other mothers globally forever.
Absolutely, and your mother's food is the best food in the world, and I don't care who you are, but my mother's food is the best in the world. No question about that, no competition, because of love. Because they put love in their food. I remember when I used to travel, when I used to DJ around the world, I used to go to various places, and quite often, people I'd stay with, there's a certain group I'd used to stay with in, I'm not going to mention the country, but they're all kind of half the time stoned. I'd be, okay, we'd finish the gig at whatever, 6 o'clock in the morning, but 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, I'd be awake, and I'd be doing my stuff, doing my meditation, start cooking. And so by 12 o'clock, everyone's waking up, and I've already prepared a meal for them. But they're in a student house, and so there's almost no ingredients. And in that particular countries, the shops are always closed, so I just have to make do with whatever there is. And such basic, simple ingredients. And at the end, everyone would say, look, we've been watching you for 4 years now, cooking the same thing with the same ingredients, and we all try and cook like you. It's just 3 ingredients, but none of us can get it to taste the way you make it. What are we missing here? It's love. Just that love that I have for you, the fact that I'm so happy to cook for you is the missing ingredient. And if I'm just cooking mechanically, because I have to do it, it's a totally different energy. So let's start actually going into the actual workshop part, where we're looking at. Can
I just ask one question?
Sure, please.
In relation to the exercise, how would you relate to people? I mean, your relate to exercise is kind of expanding mentally while maybe walking or seeing things and getting the energy from things. How would you put that in perspective of somebody exercising in a gym?
So that is,
how would they be expanding their mind?
It's not something that I particularly would ever do personally.
No.
Because along with being in that kind of environment, quite often it's testosterone filled. It's very testosterone rather. It also feeds a lot of ego. So it's a very egocentric form of exercise, and it's about repetition, boom, 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 to kind of build yourself up to look the biggest, the strongest, and it's a very different energy. Yes, it's a form of physical exercise, but and it's sad to say, a lot of good practices, because of how the Western mind kind of understands the world and thinks very much, I'm sorry to say, but from a very selfish, personal perspective about it. They take different philosophies and will reinterpret it for their egocentric side. So things like yoga, as we know, yoga in its truest form. First of all, the reason why I stopped teaching yoga is because I've found almost no one actually wants to learn yoga. They just want to learn asanas. They want to learn the postures in order to make themselves look good and maybe have a nice peaceful mind. But the actual real yoga, the physical postures, are just one tiny part of yoga. It's just a stepping stone. The end goal is balance, but complete balance, mental, physical, spiritual balance. But the physical postures are just one way to help prepare the body for the actual yoga. But almost no one really wants to know that side, so that's why I stopped teaching it. But so we need to be we need to understand where are people coming from, so from the perspective of Tantra, from the perspective of if we start looking at the different realms, so in terms of physical exercise, what physical exercise is from a tantric perspective is anything that helps you to really grow, anything that helps you to to nurture yourself, to expand your horizons, to become stronger. But if you do just that without the kind of spiritual growth, without the mental growth, it's imbalanced. So if you just do the pumping iron, boom, 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 it's out of sync. If that makes sense. So yeah, so actually let's start looking. Welcome. Let's start looking at food. So physical food. Let's start with that. What? If we look at the physical body, we are a physical body, but we're also an energetic body. So food is energy, and so the different types of food that we consume has very subtle energy in it. And so yes, it's all good and well, you may be vegan, you may have a strict vegan diet, but what is the quality of that food? What is the energetic? As Finn was saying, there's a big difference to getting an irradiated apple that has maybe has probably been sprayed something like 20-30 times with different chemicals since the day that it was picked, let alone how many times it was sprayed while it was growing, until it gets to your mouth, and it looks like an apple, it tastes like an apple, but what other chemicals are in there, and what is the energy like of this food? So if we look at so when I teach people about foraging, we'll look at a plant, and all right, so one part is to actually understand what plants are edible and what plants are not edible, but it's also about understanding where the energy is, where the vibration, the life force is of the plant. So so if we go from a seed, as it's still a seed, it still has a huge potential that's kind of locked in. It's waiting to just boom, explode. So the seed has this amazing potential for exploding. So it has some nutrients, but the moment at which you actually sprout it, bosh, this energetic is like wow, and it's really now expanding. So this has a huge and amazing life force, which if you consume, you're consuming that energetic. So the plant starts to grow, it puts on leaves. The leaves are there to start photosynthesizing, so now there's this relationship between the leaves and the roots. So the leaves, through photosynthesis, allows the roots to grow. The roots bring nutrients from the roots, which allow the leaves to grow, and vice versa. So they're both supporting each other. So now the energy is in both the leaf and in the roots. So this is where its life force is. Eventually, when it's big enough, the most difficult, the most energy sapping part of any animal's life cycle is the moment where it reproduces. So in a plant, it's when it goes to flower and seed. So it's doing all of this work, it's putting on all the roots, it's putting on all the leaves, so that it's got enough energy to create a flower. So once it's created the flower, it's now taking the energy out of the leaves, out of the roots, to put into the flower. So now the part that you would eat, the part that has the living force, is the flower. So at this point, you don't eat the leaves, you don't eat the roots, because the life force is kind of draining from it. There's still something in it, but it's not at its optimal. Whereas the flower is where it's at. Then it goes to actually fruit, whatever type of fruit it is, and now all the energetics is in the fruit, but again, not in the leaves, not in the roots. And then if it's an annual, once it's fruited, it will die. If it's a perennial, it will then restart the cycle, and so now again, so the cycle continues. So we pick the right food at the right time according to its energetics. And if we eat in a balanced way, i.e. We take on food that is full of vibration, full of energy. In fact, one thing that we see very often with many people in society is they combine foods in ways that that don't allow us to take all the nutrients from our food. So, for example, certain things like heavy grains, rices and wheat and things like that, could take 2 or 3 hours to digest in the stomach, whereas something like fruit will take half an hour, 45 minutes, something like that. So the amount of acid you need in your stomach to actually break it down is quite different. So when you're eating, all your sense receptors kick in and say, oh yeah, I know, apple, I know what this is, boom, boom, boom. I'm going to put this much acid into my stomach to break it down. You then straight away eat, or let's do it the other way around. Maybe first of all you eat the rice, so it says, oh, this is tough, I need a lot of acid in here, boom, let's get it in there so I can break this down. Lentils are also very difficult to break down, so again I need lots of energy for that. But then afterwards you eat an apple, because everyone knows we eat fruit after meals, don't we, for some reason. But all of a sudden this needs a lot less acid to break down, so when it's in the stomach, we only have one stomach, we're not cows apparently, we only have one stomach, so all of this acid and all this food is in one place, eaten very close to each other, so your food hasn't had time to digest. It's going to take 2 hours for your rice and lentils to break down. So what happens is, the only way that your body knows, right, the food must be digested now, is when the pH neutralizes. And then it opens the sphincter and allows it into your large intestines to then be absorbed. But because you've got something in your stomach that needed 2 hours to digest, and you've watered it down with something that takes a lot less, you've also maybe drunk some water with it as well, so now all of a sudden the stuff that needed just 45 minutes or half an hour to process has been in there maybe, let's say, an hour, hour and a half, and so it's over digested, it's fermented, hence gas, bloating, all the rest of it. The stuff that was needed longer to process is under digested, and therefore by the time it gets into your intestines it's undigested. It's undigested. So you don't get the nutrients from the undigested food, you get a different subset of nutrients from the over digested food, the fermented foods, and which means that you don't get all of the nutrients that you actually need from, you don't get all the potential nutrients that was in the food actually digested and absorbed through your large intestines, and most of it you're just flushing straight out in your poop. So the body says, well, actually I haven't got the nutrients I need more food. So you start eating more, and you start eating more, and especially if you keep having this total mix of foods, you end up with the body constantly saying, well, clearly my food isn't digesting, I need to put more acid in here, more acid, more acid, more acid. You end up with things like ulcers, and so on and so forth. So you can see this inappropriate form of eating creates this imbalance, and it creates this cycle of erosion. So it's about learning how to combine the right foods. In Indian cuisine you'll see people have certain set mixes of different things that they eat, some of which is really based and founded in good science in terms of how to balance food. Some of it is now just for taste. In fact, nowadays a lot of it is just for the taste of it. But actually, if you look at it historically, there was, and that's actually throughout the world, many people know, you put certain herbs and spices with certain foods because it helps to balance things out. So this is something we need to consider.
To let you know,
yep.
You've got 14 minutes left.
That's cool. Yep. So to kind of conclude here, when we're talking about physical food, we need to think about the different foods that, as an energetic. First of all, it's easy for us to break down, easy for us to digest, gives us the nutrients that we need, and you know, and the less we eat. So imagine, the more we eat, the more energy it takes to actually process it, and therefore the more tired we get, because our body's having to process so much. So if we can get the right amount, if we can get all of the nutrients from our food by eating in a sensible way, we're eating probably a quarter of what we would normally eat, saving us money, saving us having all this land necessary to grow all this food, saves us all the cooking time and all the energy and la 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 la. But we get the nutrients we need from it, and it gives us energy. It gives us so much more strength and energy than if we overconsume in inappropriate ways. So yeah, so that's food. So the same kind of thing that we do by looking at food, we can look at rest, we can look at exercise, we can look at, you know, from the mental, physical, spiritual realm, and that's essentially what this tantric tool Prama actually gives us. But I think maybe let's move on to just some questions and answers. I mean, this is just the surface, you know, we're just scratching the surface here. There's so much more we can go into. So if there's any questions on this, or if you'd like to maybe even explore the mental or spiritual realms, if you've got any questions about those, we can also talk about that. So yeah, whatever people are interested in. So
Am I live?
Julie, yay, go for it.
Me?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Julie, yeah.
Oh, oh yes, Rakesh, how when you're talking about this with food, do you actually grow a lot of your food?
Yes.
Or where are you shopping for your food, or how are you ensuring that you're getting the right product?
So I design food forests.
Sorry, are you living in a city?
I live in East London, well,
Okay.
just on the outskirts of East London, in Ilford, if people know that, just down the A12. And, well, I say I live here, I've hardly lived here for the last 20 years. But I designed a food forest for my parents. So a food forest is a garden which takes care of itself. So it's designed, if you imagine the edge of a forest and how the edge of a forest has all of the wild apples, the wild plums, it has, you know, the nettles and the burdocks and all these medicines and wild foods. So food forest is basically just designing how, you know, and no one ever waters it. No one ever goes and puts a dollop of horse manure to say, hey, you need some more extra nutrients. It just finds this balance. So what we do is we take that principle, we learn from how nature has created that richness, and design a garden accordingly, but then stretching it to say, right, instead of wild apples, let's have a real nice juicy apple. Let's have a good sized plum. Let's have you know, different root vegetables and all the rest of it. So I designed that for my parents 10 years ago, and for 4 years they were alive and making use of it, and then about 6-7 years ago they both passed away. So the garden's been pretty much abandoned until COVID. I came back, and now I'm starting to, and I'm getting something like 80% of my food from this garden. So in fact I just sent a list on, in the whole of July, I very intentionally made sure that every single meal I had was exclusively from my garden, and I never spent 1 penny on food. And I like peanuts, I must admit. There's one thing that I do go out and buy. And unfortunately, I didn't stock up because I only decided on the 1st of January, as I was walking around, I was going for a little cycle around the park, I said, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to do this. I'm not going to buy anything. I'm going to make sure everything. And it was already the 1st of July, and so I didn't have time to stock up on peanuts. So I had to do it all exclusively with just everything from my my garden. And yeah, and it's possible, but it's different food. It's not your conventional foods. If you imagine, you know, for our ancestors probably would have had something like a variety of 200 to 300 different foods in their diet. If we look at our closest relatives, the orangutans, they have something like 400 different things that they will eat throughout the year. We typically, in terms of vegetables, a typical person in a westernized society has probably 20 different vegetables and maybe 3-4 grains and a few fruits. So no more than, let's say, 30, maximum 40 different things that they're consuming. So if you just imagine all the micronutrients that are being missed out because of this monoculture of eating, it's again about it's imbalance. It's imbalance. It's whereas if we go back to really eating lots and lots of wild things, they are more densely packed in terms of nutrients, so we don't need to eat so much because they're so dynamic. So in my garden, I know when I started this garden for my parents, I had 100 and something like 65, I think 166. It's in a book somewhere. I'll look it up. 166 different yields from the garden. Right now, having had it abandoned for so many years, I think there's something like almost 60 that are from before. Plus, my neighbours said, "Oh, Rakesh, you're here. Oh, hey, I've got some extra tomatoes. Would you like some?" Okay, yeah, thanks. So I've planted a few things this year, which I haven't done for 10 years. So, but with the exception of the things that I planted this year, I think I've still got about 60, 65 different things that I'm eating from my garden throughout the year.
Can I just ask you on that,
sure.
though? You're very fortunate to have a garden like that. And I mean, in Somerset, when I'm in Somerset, I'm relatively lucky. I've got one, well, it's on stones, so it's not very productive. But how does one manage when you haven't got a garden? And the vast majority, a lot of us do not have a garden. And particularly those that are struggling a little bit more are more likely not to have a garden.
So one of the projects that in fact tomorrow I'm starting a workshop on how to design community forest gardens. So the idea is that we take, and I've got 4 potential sites in and around this borough, where we're going to, different public parks and this, that and the other, where we teach each other, we design a food forest and we teach each other how to make them. The intention being then we can skill each other to then go and find other places, other communal spaces where we can. The other idea is through transition towns in particular, if you've heard of them, is we organise cooperatives, food cooperatives, or we can either organise a food buyers cooperative, where we go to a particular farm who is producing good local quality, good quality local organic food, to say, hey, deliver it to us in this particular way. We will pay you a living wage. There's also, there's lots of different projects we can do. So
I guess the other thing I was thinking about is interesting about my dad loved wildflowers, and we'd be walking around and then he'd just make us eat something, and usually they weren't that nice. I've got to be honest, some of them were, but some of them weren't that nice. But actually that thing about knowing the stuff that's around us, and nettles, for example, I know people do now make nettle soup and stuff again, but I guess that's the other. But I think the challenge is sometimes in a city is about that. One is limited access to things. Sometimes in a city you don't even know if nettles are clean, do you, because of dogs?
Yes.
But I think there are things, aren't they? But I think it's a problem that we don't know what they're all there. People don't know what they're looking at, do they? How do we instill that knowledge of gathering, really, isn't it, rather than gardening? What can we? Yeah.
So one of the projects I do, so all the students who studied with me join this Roots and Permaculture Network, where we have regular skills exchanges, where we skill each other in exactly these things. But we've now started to do, that's just for people who studied with me. But for the public, this same group, so my students are now passing that on to the public through a project called Roots and Resilience. So on Facebook, you can look us up. We're on YouTube as well. So we're just passing on little skills of how to forage food, how to Like yesterday, I just went to or 3 days ago now, I went to the park and I just got loads of horse chestnuts, and now I've turned them into soap. So I'm now washing all my clothes. So it's an eco-friendly, absolutely, completely, 100% free soap for my laundry and washing myself and stuff. I collected hawthorn. I went on a cycle ride with Extinction Rebellion on Monday around Newham, and there's so much free food. Just okay, their tour was to go and see historical sites and sites of interest, and all the way I'm like, oh well, look, you can eat this, oh look, yeah, oh we can do that with that, oh here's this, here's that, and there is so much free food out there, it's unreal.
Guys, I have to be terribly rude. Now, I've used the Zoom account of my ex, and there's a meeting. She's got an important meeting with Funder starting now. So we're going to have to wrap up. But basically, look up Rakesh on Facebook. He's on our wellbeing group. Let's ask questions in the group. I think you know so much. We'd love to get you back for more. I think we're all hungry for more. But also, Rakesh, if you could share the stuff about the courses you're doing, that would be great.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry to rudely interrupt. Rakesh, you're amazing. I've always had a lot of time for you, but hearing you know a lot of stuff, and I can see us all hanging off every word. So I'm going to have to be really sorry and say bye, everyone. We'll be back next week, and I should know what it is.
The poetry, poetry for well-being, isn't it? Or something
Yeah. Working with words, an introduction to poetry therapy. Yeah, so cool. All right, Rakesh, thank you so much.
You take care. Lots of love. Big hugs, everyone. Enjoy.
Cheers. Bye.
Okay.